thought shit would be sweet. It's a whole nother level of sound.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Tinted Visors podcast. Coming back at you here with episode 9 of season 2. Today we're going to be doing some recaps, just seeing what's happening around the league the past couple weeks. Then we're going to jump into some recent big headlines. That being said, let's get this going.
Starting with some recent recaps, I wanted to start in the Pacific Division. Still sitting in 5th place is the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously, that McDavid injury did not help their case. They did pretty solid without him, but they're still under 500. Biggest headline for me is I think we got a new listener. Zach Hyman must have been listening on our podcast because you called him out and he started scoring. Just kidding, of course. Probably doesn't know who we are, but he did sort of turn it on. Draisaitl, they leaned on him a lot when McDavid was injured. Now McDavid's back. They should be starting to turn things up, but at what point does it get kind of concerning? Like by game 20, maybe game 25, they're still under 500.
Yeah, it's tough to say considering how they started last year and, how far we know they went last year as well. So I don't think there's any need for concern for the Oilers. I think they're just slow start back-to-back seasons. When you have two of the best players in the world on the same team, it's going to start clicking. They're built to win now. I don't think there's any concern in the near future with their record. If it's still under 500, don't think there's any reason to panic.
Yeah, and they had a shorter offseason, a little shorter than usual, so that might be a little bit of a reason there. But going to the first and second place, Vegas, followed by LA in that division. We both had them around the 3, 4, and 5 slot in our predictions, but they've just been turning it on. Vegas, that top line has just been unreal for them. And LA, even without Doughty, they got some solid scoring. Kemper's having a pretty solid bounce back season, and Byfield's, having a pretty slow start. So if they can get him going and Doughty back, they're going to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, the Kings, we kind of slept on them a bit, said they were just first-round exit year after year to the Oilers. But good mix of veterans and young guys. You're led up front by Kopitar, who's at a point-per-game pace right now, showing that he's still got it. And then you got a young guy like Alex Lafreniere, who's just finding the back of the net right now, on a little bit of a heater. Wanted to shout him out. I think he's up to 8 goals this year. So yeah, Kings look good. Good mix of young guys and veterans up front. Maybe they can get out of the first round this year, but I don't know. We'll see.
And I can't talk about Pacific without talking about the Canucks. Caden, give me a little insight. DeBrusk starting to score. Pettersson still sort of having a little drought.
Yeah, Pettersson, you watch him shoot, and he's just putting no weight on that back knee. Little bit concerning. Maybe he's playing through something, so you look at the Canucks trainers to hopefully, just tough pill to swallow initially, but some time off the ice might be needed for Pettersson just to get him back at 100%. We need him being explosive. And yeah, Jake DeBrusk, finally finding the back of the net. Found his first in San Jose. Stuff's finally clicking for the Canucks as they sweep their California road trip.
A couple of the teams I wanted to mention. Pittsburgh, 5-8-2, not looking too good for them. It doesn't really look like it's going to change. Doesn't really look like it's going to get any better for them. And then Nashville, last place in the league after being the biggest spender in the offseason. They're 4-9-1. Same thing with them. It doesn't really look like things are trending upward for them, so it's getting kind of concerning. We'll touch more on them later. And then last thing, the Atlantic, Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa are still sitting outside the playoffs. When is this ever going to change? At this point, do you have any hope in either of those teams? I feel like we have the same conversation every week. We're talking about which one of those 3 teams are going to make the playoffs.
In the Atlantic Division, that we've said time and time again, is a dogfight. It's going to be tough for any of those teams to squeak in. And we always had faith in Buffalo. They let us down last year, so, we're kind of losing that. Ottawa, they found their goalie. Is it the answer? Still a bit too early to tell, but it looks like they'll be fighting for a wild card spot. And then Detroit, the Yzer plan. It's tough to trust it anymore. All these teams loaded with skill guys, and they need the fall off of a team like Boston, who has had a slow start, I think, in order to squeak into the playoffs.
Talk about Ottawa's goalie. I'm going to list a few stats here for you. Ullmark, a 3 goals against average, and then the 892 save percentage, and Jacob Markstrom, a 904 save percentage and a 265 goals against average. Who's your starter for Team Sweden at this point?
Starter for Sweden, honestly, the Four Nations tournament, it's just about who's hot, really. So whoever's riding, right now, I'd start Markstrom. Ullmark has not looked great in Ottawa, hasn't really returned to that Vezina form yet. So right now, I would start Markstrom, give him the nod, and I'd give him that crease until he proves that it isn't his anymore. Such a short tournament, right? So Ullmark may have the better track record, but if Markstrom's hot at the time, you got to give him the nod.
They're going to rely on their goaltending because going up against heavy juggernauts of Canada and U.S., they're going to need someone to backstop them.
Speaking of goalies in the Four Nations, we are looking a little bit out, so we'll We'll give some more in-depth analysis closer to the tournament. But how are you feeling about Canada's goalies right now? Do you think it's going to hold them back from winning that gold medal?
I don't know if it'll hold them back from winning the gold medal, but I think any sort of scares that they have throughout the tournament will be because of goaltending. I mean, right now you're looking at a tandem of Hill and Binnington. Maybe Stuart Skinner is thrown in there. Maybe someone emerges that we're not even talking about yet. But I mean, all three of those goalies are not having very good seasons so far, and it's just kind of concerning. But when you look at the rest of that lineup, that D core, it's just so powerful, and then that offensive core, you could kind of think that they could outscore their problems. I do still think they are the favorites to win, no matter who their goalie is. But I think any sort of flaws or any sort of scares that the team has will be because of the goaltending. Speaking of that Preds team, they bring in Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea in the offseason. And they signed them all to term. They've also got Yossi, Forsberg, Saros all signed to term. Terrible start. Not sure if it's going to get any better. Barry Trotz came out and said that they might do a rebuild, and then he kind of backtracked and said that they might add before deciding on a rebuild. It's just kind of a mess, and they're not even in like a good spot to rebuild. You can't sell off all these guys with term. So they kind of have to buy, I guess, and I don't even know where they go from here.
They've totally painted themselves into a corner, trading Askarov, signing these guys to term. This team's built to win now. And you talk about those guys they added from free agency. Add on top of that, Roman Yossi, Philip Forsberg. Like, this team should be winning. On paper, very solid team. So they've painted themselves into a corner. I don't think there's any avenue for a rebuild here. I wouldn't be too panicked, though. There's a lot of talent on this roster, but last place in the NHL, never a great place to be.
They've got some young assets, Philip Tomasino, David Edstrom. They've got Vegas's first-round picks. They got some pieces to move. I gotta think that Barry Trotz is going to be aggressive and try to pick up some, rental maybe for the season. But they got to sort of act now and get something to sort of change the way this season's going for them.
Yeah, you got to do something. I think the threat of a rebuild was an empty threat, and you've got most of your chips in the middle. Why not push them all in? Start making some calls, see who's available, and make some moves to shake this team up.
At this point, I kind of want to see David Edstrom get traded. I think this is his third team already. He's never played an NHL game yet. So by the looks of it, he might get flipped and it'll be his fourth team before he even suits up for a game. Speaking of young players, we've got Matvei Michkov serving as a healthy scratch for the first time. Kate, I'm going to throw it over to you, but I'll give you some stats out here first. 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points in 12 games played. He's second on their team in scoring, and he's arguably one of their best forwards. Torts says it's part of the process, but I mean, you never saw Bedard get scratched the last year, right? So what do you think of this scratching? Is it warranted? I mean, he is a -8, so that could be part of it.
I think the whole thing is being blown out of proportion a little bit. I think it's one game. It depends how long he is scratched for, but I think one game is a healthy scratch. I think you can learn a lot from it just watching a game from the press box and his defensive play. It hasn't been great. Torts isn't wrong. It's just not, he's been one of the best forwards on the team. Philly is struggling, and they crave talent and skill like that. So I think having a player like that on the ice at all times is a must. But he's also very young, not used to the 82-game season here in North America for the young Russian star. So I think it's being blown out of proportion a little bit. I don't think it's a huge deal as long as it's one game. Anything more than that, I think is, I don't think it's doing anything.
Yeah, like you said, it could be served as a great sort of learning point, kind of see how the game is being played from the outside. But like you said as well, like you gotta expect he's got to be in the lineup, every game. Like, he's probably the reason that people are paying tickets to get inside. They want to see him play. So it's kind of a rough look, but like you said, probably blown out of proportion, and he'll probably be suiting up for the next game in the foreseeable future.
If he's scratched for more than one game, how long until Torts you think gets run out of Philly? How much time is left on Torts' clock in Philly?
If it gets to a point where it's like, if it's warranted and he's like continuing this trend of -8 and he gets worse and worse and worse, then I feel like Torts will probably be fine. But if it's unwarranted, then it gets to a point where it's like 1 in every 4 games, 1 in every 5 games, and Torts is kind of just getting a little power hungry. I think maybe halfway through the season they kind of run him out, especially with the way that they're going. They're bottom 5 in the league and not really getting any better. So I have to think he's one of the coaches on the hot seat, but definitely not the most likely to be fired. Flipping over to a fellow Russian, Igor Shesterkin, having a very good season. Last game, like yesterday's game, removed. We're not talking about that against the Sabres. Kind of reported that he was signing an extension. I think Kevin Weeks just said a quick, 11.5 by 8. kind of deal, and that was the entire tweet. So we'll see what kind of comes from that. But he's having a very good season so far, and that would make him by far the highest paid goalie in the league. Some money that we've never seen thrown at a goalie before.
Yeah, and with the cap rising, stuff like this is going to happen. And when Igor said, I think his agent said that he wanted to reset the goalie market in terms of value, I think people were thinking like 12, 13, like myself included. So 11.5, a little underwhelming, still a ton of money. But, you wonder where that puts the Rangers. Got to move on from Trouba. You have guys like Zibanejad. Even Panarin is earning a ton of money, but you wouldn't move him. Puts the Rangers in a tough spot. They would have to look for some depth from some league minimum guys, which is never what you want. But makes you wonder why these guys take such massive paydays when it's their time. Yes, you only get 1 or 2 contracts like this in your career. But yeah, I would like to see some guys take some pay cuts and, prioritize winning over just a little bit more money.
Yeah, I mean, biggest example is Sidney Crosby, taking a massive pay cut, and they got 3 cups out of it. But it is tough. You kind of look at the Maple Leaf situation, like we've said about a year ago. Why should Nylander take a pay cut if no one else is taking a pay cut, right? Why should Igor take a pay cut if Trouba's making $8 million on your team and Panarin's making 11.6 or whatever it is? But like you said, we got to think that Zibanejad's on his way out after this season. Same with Trouba, because you got not only Shesterkin money but also Lafreniere money kicking in next season, and that's about almost $20 million that's going to be added to your cap. So I'm not sure how easy those contracts will be to move. I don't know if they're going to get anything out of it or if they're going to have to attach something to it. But it's going to be a busy off season, and they pretty much have to win now, I would say. Moving on to some other news, probably some of the biggest headlines in the past couple of weeks. The Avs lineup has just been taking a beating all season long, and it pretty much started, last season, with Landeskog going down. Nichushkin was out, still out, and then this season, Lehkonen didn't start until last game. Colton got injured after having a very strong start. Jonathan Drouin is out. Miles Wood is out. It's just a massive blow to their team, and they're 6-8 right now. They're sitting 6th in the Central. They need these players. They need this depth to come back if they want to start winning games.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, especially in Colorado. Yeah, it's just tough. You talk about that. I think to start the season, they had 6 of their top 9 forwards. When you look back, injured. And you got a guy like Ross Colton having a great start to the year, broken foot, 6 weeks. And you get Lehkonen back now, so that's definitely a boost. And you've got Makar and McKinnon both near the top of the league in points. They are putting this team on their back, and they need help soon. Look for the Avs. Maybe Nichushkin comes back soon, like you said, or to make a move, bring somebody in from the outside to shore up that forward depth.
Yeah, with Lehkonen back, that's obviously a huge boost. And like you said, Nichushkin could provide some very good depth as well. But like you said, they're top guys are the top of the leaderboards in stats. And, if this season goes into the crapper, I mean, that's 1 whole year wasted of McKinnon prime, Makar prime, Rantanen prime, and then you don't even know if Rantanen's staying next year. He's going to get a huge pay raise, and this could have been, one of their last chances to really make a run. And it just sucks to see so many guys out. I don't think I've ever seen a team get so battered so early in the season. Like we always talk about, one team, 2, 3 major injuries. This team has like 6 guys on the IR. Like it's absolutely insane. Best thing for them, their defense is staying intact, I guess. All those guys are healthy, which is good. Anunen's doing pretty well, but that forward core just looks abysmal to a point where a 7th rounder from the most recent draft is making his NHL debut, and respect to him. Good for him for putting in the work. But that's just something you just never see happen in the NHL.
Yeah, and Kenny and I were just talking about it. The list of there's 3 players from the 2024 draft class that have played in the NHL. Celebrini, who went 1. Jet Luchenko for the Flyers, who made the team out of camp. I think he went 13. And then you have this 7th rounder for the Avs. Like you said, props to him, but man, just really shows how banged up the Avs are.
Another big storyline. Going for another Russian here is pretty much a Russian episode. Politics aside, that team Russia in a potential Eastern Nations face-off would have been absolutely lethal. So it's kind of too bad we don't get to see that. But Russian we're going with right now is Alex Ovechkin chasing that goal record. And it's good to see that they're not just, throwing games and trying to get him goals, but they're actually winning games. They're having a very solid season, 9-3 so far. They're third in the Metro. They're scoring at an incredible rate of 4 goals a game. And Ovi's got 8 goals so far in the 12 games played. I said it a year ago. I said it would be within 2 years, and it's looking very possible so far. I think obviously the rate's going to slow down, but Caden, has your opinion changed? Do you think he can get it this year?
Oh, dude, with the way the Caps are rolling, like, and Ovi being on an absolute heater, he might just get it done this year. And we talked about the Caps off-season acquisitions, and you loved the moves they made. I wasn't too big of a believer. I thought they were solid moves, but proving us wrong with that record they have right now. But I think it's going to be tough. He's going to have to keep this pace for the rest of the season if he wants to think about that goal record this year. But honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I don't think he's thinking about that goal record right now. The Caps are winning. I think he's focused on team success. So I don't think, and like you said, they're not throwing games to get him these goals. He's not going out of his way to do anything more, cherry picking, none of that. So I don't think he hits it this year. You know, the Caps looking pretty good for the playoffs. You know, hot start. I don't think it's crazy sustainable, but this is definitely a playoff team. I like how they're playing, and I could see Ovi getting the goal record a quarter of the way through next season.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I was just going to say that, you know, if he had the choice, I'm pretty sure he would pick playoffs over, you know, breaking that goal record this year, and that's good for him. You know, it's a lot of it takes a lot for someone to sort of put that record aside and really shoot for the playoffs, and they're looking like, you know, it's a real possibility right now. Dubois is doing really well, Mangiapane. Dylan Strome and Ovi is looking like, you know, the next Backstrom and Ovi, the way they can set each other up. It, like, no disrespect to Backstrom, and obviously Strome's not as good, but the way he's been playing so far, that sort of chemistry they have has just been unreal and so beneficial for them. Chikrin's been on the IR, so to get him back would be such a boost to that team, and the goalie tandem's looking really strong. I was just going to say, you know, if it gets to a point where he's at, I think the record is 894. So if he's at 894, say it's last game of the season, he needs one more goal to break it. How many shots do you think they're feeding him for that game? Do you think he's getting like 15? Because you look at Matthews last season, he was sitting at 69 goals. Last game of the season, I think he had like 13, 14 shots. What do you think Ovi's trying to get?
Oh, man. Well, do you think Ovi would even be playing? Like, this is the guy who skips the All-Star game. Like, if the Caps are already in or out, do you think he's even playing?
If the Caps are in, I think he's got to be playing. I gotta think he's playing.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Ovi's a weird guy, but yeah, like Matthews. I don't know what you said. How many did he have in his game?
I don't know. It was double digits for
Yeah,
sure.
like I at least 12 on net. I would say, got to be like 20 attempts, bare minimum. I think he's throwing everything at the net, and the way he's been running, one of them's got to go in, right? So yeah, like at least 12.
Would you do it on an empty net or no?
Oh, I guess it just kind of depends. I think it's personal preference. If you would you win the goal record on an empty netter?
As the last game, your last shot, I don't think I would. I feel like I would just save it.
Like, you got another season, right? Like,
I would, yeah. You play another season, you're bound to get at least one goal next season.
Yeah.
You're gonna break it eventually, but to do it off empty netter, obviously the record is amazing, but I feel like that would kind of take a hit to sort of, you know, how impressive it was.
for sure. But yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap up today's episode. You know, just a lot of content, just fun chatting. Good episode. Always good to get on here, especially with us both being busy with school. But good to catch up on the recent news, and it'll be interesting to see how stories develop in the next few weeks.
Yeah, just a big reason why, you know, in-season play is so much better than the off-season. Just so much, you know, consistent, you know, continuous news coming out and stuff we can talk about. So it's fun.
But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for today, and we'll see you in the next episode.
You really thought she would be sweet. It's a whole nother level of sound.